session is nailing the mystery genre. Writing a mystery novel and keeping the threads together till the end, until the suspense finally unfolds. How does one do that effectively each time that one writes a novel? Unfolding that skill are with us today. Alison is a London-based crime writer and award-winning radio dramatist. She began writing full-time with the first of her series featuring Sister Agnes, a contemporary detective Catholic nun. Alison also writes a police series featuring Detective Inspector Killick and has embarked on a new series set in the 1920s and featuring a fictional Agatha Christie as a detective. And we have with us Kulpreet Yadav, a spy fiction author, motivational speaker, and an ex-armed forces officer who founded Open Road Review online literary magazine in 2011. His last novel, The Girl Who Loved a Spy, was released in 2016. I request Kulpreet to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Madam, for that introduction. And pleasure to have you here, Alison Joseph. First of all, welcome to India. Let us give her Indian type applause. हमको सुना ही नहीं दिया थोड़ा सा. Okay, so I am really very fortunate to be speaking with an established crime fiction writer from the United Kingdom, that is Alison. Apart from writing crime fiction, she has been the chairperson of the Crime Writers Association of the United Kingdom. She brings with her this wealth of information and knowledge, and I am very much looking forward to this session.
Thank you.
So let me begin by asking you, first time to India?
Yeah, first time in India.
First time to Asia?
Yes.
So how do you feel? I mean, did you get some plots here, crime plots?
Gosh, that's such a difficult question. No, really, it all happens in my head. That's the strange thing about being a crime writer, that whatever goes on out there is never as strange as what happens in my imagination. Can you? Can people hear me?
Can you hear her at the back?
I will talk like this.
No,
Can
you
hear
have
me
to speak.
now? All right. I'll really, really shout. Okay.
Can you adjust it from there? Please go ahead.
Anyway, it's lovely being in India. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So the plots will of course form, and since I'm a writer as well, we know that this is a process that takes time, and you are probably just observing, meeting people, going around. Have you been able to go for a walk or something?
I went for a walk, yes. Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Alison, in the introduction it has been said that one of her series has got the main protagonist, which is called as Sister Agnes. Sister Agnes is a Catholic nun who is also an investigator, which means she's a detective. But, and also very interestingly, her other series has got, guess who in the lead? Who do you think is the greatest mystery writer in the world? Agatha Christie, you got it right. So the protagonist of her book is Agatha Christie. In fact, I was reading one of her book, which is very fascinating. Now, I want to ask you, Alison, I understand you are Agatha Christie's fan, and of course, all of us are. Why Agatha Christie? Make her as a character. Is it because of the fact that you love her and adore her and want to lead that kind of a life through the alternate world you're creating, or is it just marketing thing because it connects more with people?
I don't think you should ever write a book for just marketing, because that's in the end what the book will be about, and the reader will know that. So no, not just marketing. What happened was my publishers said, oh, I know, why don't we do Agatha Christie as a detective? And to start with, I said no, because I didn't know that much about her, and also I'd never written anything historical, and obviously it's set in the 20s, this sort of fear that I would get it wrong. So I was quite wary of it. And also because I was chair of the Crime Writers Association, I know Agatha Christie's estate. I know her grandson. I didn't want to upset anybody, you know. So I was really quite reluctant. But then I went away and thought about it, and I thought this is such a good idea. It's such an interesting idea to have to play with this idea of what's real and what's fictional, because obviously the story is just entirely made up, but she's real. So there's this very strange thing that happens when you're putting somebody real into something fictional, and obviously this is a fictional version of her. So yes, so I said, okay, you know, let's give it a go. And actually, I mean, I always admired Agatha Christie because, I mean, is she the best-selling author ever? I think she has sold more books than anybody else. But just she was so clear about what she was doing, about telling the story. With every single book, you can just feel this is someone who knows what they're doing, and there's a generosity to the reader that she has as well. So it kind of started from there. And I had a chat with the estate, and we agreed. I mean, obviously, I don't use any of her characters. I didn't want to upset anybody, and I hope I'm respectful to her and to her memory. But what's really interesting, what I kind of stumbled upon, is that, so I've written this book, and there's Agatha Christie, but everybody reading the book knows about Agatha Christie. So, for example, in real life, Agatha Christie had this awful divorce in the 20s. Her husband ran off with another woman, and in those days it was very, very shameful. It was a terrible thing to happen to a woman, and it really knocked her badly mentally. She was very, very sad and withdrawn, and in fact a lot of her writing came out of that time because she had to earn a living. She had a daughter, and there was just the two of them. And I have a scene, I think it's in this one, yes, where she's talking to this terribly flamboyant theatrical woman who sort of says, oh, well, you know, I'm never going to get married. And Agatha says, you know, not for me either. I've done it once. I'm not going, you know, I would never get married again. And this woman looks at her and she says, oh, you will, Agatha. Out there is somebody who will make you a very, very happy wife. And of course that is what happened. You know, that's true. She married very, very happily for a second time. So for the reader, that's really fun that we're all reading this thinking, we know this woman's right. But Agatha herself, at that point, doesn't know that she's right. So it's really kind of an interesting thing to do, which I hadn't kind of worked out when I started on it, to put somebody real into a story.
That's a very interesting thing. How many of you in the audience know, is there anyone here who's not read Agatha Christie? Hands, please. Okay, just one, two. Okay, wonderful. And I can see a lot of school students here. Now, I must tell you that Agatha Christie mystery novels, we had a separate, the focus author last year, those of you who were here at PLF, I was here, was Agatha Christie, right? And she really wrote amazing stories, but it is her personal life, which actually as an author, you can't put your personal life into your own books, which is what now in this book, Alison Joseph has tried to create. So her protagonist is Agatha Christie, and I was reading this book, and it's absolutely fantastic last night, that she is, you know, she's going through her divorce, but at the same time, she also is trying to investigate a murder, right? So it is absolutely unique, and I can't really think of any Indian book which has done something like this. So great. Tell me about which Agatha Christie novel is your favorite?
So there is my mind's gone blank. Is it this Murder in the Vicarage? No. My mind's gone completely blank. It's this lovely, lovely one that starts with this terribly, terribly posh English woman waking up her husband and saying, darling, there's a body in the library. Of course that's what it's called. Darling, there's a body in the library. And, or I think he's waking her up. And this terribly respectable English woman thinks she's dreaming, thinks she's having a dream where her husband's telling her there's a body in the library. Then there really is a body in the library. And it's so unexpected, and they're not the sort of people who would have a body in the library. So yeah, that's one of my favourite. But the interesting thing about Agatha is that we think of her as this terribly respectable, successful elderly lady with grey hair. But actually, she wrote for fun. She started off writing for fun, because she was married to this man who was looking after her. And then because of the divorce, she was quite a steely, determined woman, and she had to keep her household as she expected it to be kept. Her daughter was in boarding school. And so the Poirot book that she wrote as a bit of a laugh, Poirot really took off as a character. So she started having to write Poirot books really for a living. And I think with some of those you can just feel that she's got a bit tired of him, just sometimes. Whereas the Miss Marple books, she loved Miss Marple. And again, so I tend to prefer the Miss Marple books just because I think she did. You can feel the enjoyment of it. But the other interesting thing about Agatha Christie is that she wrote these books under the name of Mary Westmacott. She wrote 6 of those. And they're absolutely brilliant. And as a writer reading them, you can feel this person thinking, I'm going to do something different. And you can feel it in the writing, this enjoyment. And they're really strange and experimental books. And I've just finished one called Absent in the Spring. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It's not a crime story. It's about as autobiographical as Agatha ever could get, I think. And it's about a woman who realizes that she's been living a sham life. And it's really moving. It's really, really, it sort of tugs at your heart. And Agatha said it was one of her favourite books of all the things she'd written. She said it was one of the few where she felt that the things she had set out to do, she'd actually completed, she'd pulled off. So yes, that's one of, at the moment, Absent in the Spring is my favourite Agatha Christie book.
I think my personal favourite is, of course, all the books were great, but anyone's read And Then There Were None? You like that? Okay. Now, the session really is not about Agatha Christie. It is just about, we're talking about Agatha Christie because that's how she's created a character. But it is about nailing the mystery genre. So, do we have aspiring writers in the audience here? Can we have hands? Oh, quite a few. Not quite a few, but a few. Great. Okay. So, from Agatha Christie's time till now, obviously a lot of things have changed, and one of the thing is technology and the way the investigators work, right? Now, we as writers are actually, we are the ones who formed our ideas of understanding how the detectives work through those kind of books, but the technology is completely different. Now, as a writer, I've got my way to handle this particular part, the tech part, but I would like to ask you, how do you handle this? Are you a very tech savvy person? Are you in touch with things? Do you understand IP addresses and etc., etc.? How do you cope with this change?
It's such an interesting question. Because, you know, in the time of Sherlock Holmes, in those Sherlock Holmes stories, he's the detective, and the police are always kind of bumbling fools several steps behind him. And it's kind of believable for the 19th century. But now, if you have an amateur detective, like, you know, Sister Agnes is set in the present, she works in a hostel for homeless people in London, she is my detective. But the problem is, of course, if someone's killed, the police, they have CCTV, they have mobile phone records, they have forensic stuff. It's very difficult to make your amateur detective cleverer than the police. And either, I think, as a writer, you get bogged down with the technicalities. I mean, I have written, Berenice Killick is my police detective, and I had to do so much research just about what she would be doing in her job. And I think, we were talking about this earlier, it can really slow the story down to get all that right. And of course, the fun, if you're Sherlock Holmes, the story can whiz along because he's just looking at different sorts of cigarette ash or something, and it's just fun, you know. So, yes, what there's a lovely policeman who I do talk to for my research who's just so helpful. Although the funny thing is, I will go to him with a plot and I'll say, you know, well, what I thought is it's present day London, this has happened, someone's found, you know, and however strange it is, he'll say, oh, we had one of those up by Edmonton last year, however strange it is. But bless him, he said there is always someone who knows more than we do, by definition. And if those people who know more than the police don't want to tell the police, then your amateur detective is already available. She can have that privileged information. And because Sister Agnes works in a hostel for homeless kind of runaway kids in South London, by definition, she's already in a world of people who are on the edge of society, who don't want to talk to the police. So that's kind of how it worked, and that's how I sidestep the stuff you were talking about, because I think it can get in the way, all that forensic stuff.
I think so, because what I try to do, how I try to approach, of course, I do not write detective fiction in that sense, and I write spy thrillers, and they're about spies, and we were having a discussion about how spies and detectives are similar, but also dissimilar in certain ways. But it is, I think, quite a bit of challenge to be in touch with technology as a writer, because it needs to be a part of your plot, and unless you do that, the younger readers who are more who are using technology more than us probably will not be able to. For example, just a very small thing, like in an Agatha Christie book or a Sherlock Holmes book, you might say that he hung up, right? Now we don't hang up anymore, right? We use cell phones, so we have to evolve and say he disconnected, right? Or he pressed the red button, right? So these sort of changes are there. I also want to ask you about James Patterson. Do you know about James Patterson, everyone? Okay, so Alison has co-authored a book with James Patterson, and James Patterson, if those of you do not know, has written more than 300 books, several out of which have been co-authored. He's the largest selling crime fiction writer, if I'm not wrong, in the whole world, and he writes great books, and he introduced last year something known as crime shots, which were short long stories. What do you call them? Book shots. And I really do not know how commercially successful or not so successful those books were, but those books were there in the market. Was yours crime shot as well? That is one question. It's a book shot. And how was the experience to work with the largest selling crime writer?
It was lovely, actually. He's a very respectable person to work with. Again, I sound very negative, but this was another thing that came to me where I said, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that." Like the Agathas, I'm not normally like that, but I did a little short story called Samir's Lament that you can get as a Kindle single, and it features this Irish detective called Malone, who is actually coming out in his own series next year. And James Patterson's people wanted an Irishman for one of these book shots. They wanted a sort of Irish flavour to the story. So they came to me and they said, "Do you want to do this?" And I'd read James Patterson, and it is not how I write. I mean, there's far more guns and shooting and dead bodies in a James Patterson book than I would normally put in one of mine. So again, I wasn't sure I was the person for them, but he was very respectful and he said, "No, you write what you want to write." And so I had to write quite a big synopsis of the story I would tell. And it's called The Exile. And then once they'd accepted the synopsis, really I just went away and wrote it. And bits of it he edited. As I've been saying to people, the great thing about it is that where there's a very beautifully written passage that's terribly poetic, everyone will think I wrote that. And where there's a bit that's a bit clunky and a bit badly written, I can say, "Oh no, poor old James, that's the bit he wrote." So yeah, no, it was really enjoyable. And it's called The Exile. It is sort of one of my obsessions, when you put somebody out of their homeland in some way. If you remove someone from where they belong, where they have relatives, where they have a past, and you put them in a new place, what that does to them, and how I think it's maybe one of the tropes of detective fiction is that that's quite often a starting point for a story.
Great. Of late, we've seen in India that many of the crime television series have become very popular. I'm sure some of you must have seen Dexter and Sherlock and Banshee, what is that? Banshee and so many other serials which keep coming. And now I'm not sure whether it has been aired or not, but Strike. You people know about Cormoran Strike? Everybody knows that. Who's the author? J.K. Rowling, and she writes under an assumed name, and that character has become very popular, and those books have done very well. Most of us have read it. We've read it, and that series is also likely to be. It's already been aired on the BBC on one of the channels, I think, in the UK. Now that brings me to your experience of working with BBC, and what exactly did you do there?
Well, I did radio, not television.
You did writing for television, is it?
No, well, it was for BBC radio drama, so there were radio plays that I wrote. So I haven't written for telly.
So was that crime writing?
I did adapt some of the Meg Ray stories by Simonor. I did some of the Meg Ray stories for radio drama, and that was crime. But a lot of my radio plays actually aren't crime. It's quite nice to have time off from the dead bodies, actually. So it was fun doing radio plays that were about other things: romance, love, people having a nice time. I was going back to your previous point about thrillers and crime, and because I think where your spy, reading your book, where I imagine your spy is quite realistic, is that he's on his own. It seems to me that that's a trope of the thriller writing. The key thriller writer camera is that he's essentially solitary, isn't he? He has to be. He's hidden. He can't reveal who he is. And I think at least that's a realistic, for the thriller genre, that's quite realistic. Whereas, of course, the problem if you write a copper, if you write a policeman, woman, they're always in teams. And yet I think what you and I probably both understand is that the key detective character is solitary. It's this, there's always a point with Sherlock Holmes where he's on his own thinking, and dear old Watson is saying, what's happening, and Sherlock's a few steps ahead, and we're waiting to find out. And that's certainly true of Poirot. It's a classic archetypal thing, and I think it's probably where the spy novel wins out, that's the sort of believable, realistic thing, whereas real policemen, they're always having meetings, poor people, they're always filling in paperwork,
See, detectives are, as per my understanding, basically two types. They could be investigating on the behalf of the state police, so the policeman becomes a detective, or there could be someone like we had this great conversation with Rajni Pandit yesterday, who's India's first lady detective. So you could have a detective who's a private detective and who can be hired by any individual, and that person goes about doing that investigation. Now, versus this, the life of a spy is totally different, because as a spy, you cannot tell anyone that you're a spy. You can probably make a visiting card and say, so-and-so, Mr. A.B. Singh, detective, right? Private detective, whatever detective. But as a spy, you cannot say that you are actually spying. So that makes it more difficult, because you see, when we talk about stories at a fundamental level, they are always about identity. And in the case of a spy, there can be no identity. And that is something that the spy has to always, that is the greatest conflict that the spy is having all the time. So my character is spy. So in that sense, he's got, like all spies, he's got a front, he's deep undercover. So he's got a front job. So in my case, my spy works as a journalist, as you read. So that is where I think it wings out. And a spy is more lonely, because with the organization with whom he's working, is actually not really attached in that sense. He cannot go back on daily basis and call his boss and say, okay, this situation has happened, what should I do now? Because as a spy, you are expected to finish your mission on your own. And if you end up getting killed, or if you end up getting caught, and we know the case that I'm coming to now, the state is going to say probably that we don't know who you are. So the odds of you getting in that kind of situation also are very high. So I feel, since the stakes are of that nature, I think probably it is different, and you need a different kind of a hardwired brain to be a spy. But then, of course, the procedures of going about, of following people, of using technology to find out what is happening, to analyze, to put the pieces together so that it forms a picture, all that is more or less similar. So you see, one of the things that I always keep thinking as a thriller writer is how to engage the audience. And I think in India, unlike, and I'm coming to that, in the United Kingdom or Scotland or Scandinavian countries where the population is less and people have probably more time, and they can, they probably not so many distractions, not so much of noise. But here it is actually all about the kind of chaos. There is an order, as one of my writer friends says, in chaos as well. So I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is that you need to grab the attention of the writer straight in the first page itself. I try to do, at a more leisurely pace, and playing with language, and establishing the plot and showing certain things and not showing other things. And after 2 pages, if nothing is actually shown, the writer is not going to read further. So I have burnt my fingers, and I realized over a period of time that the plot has to be established fast. And that is what, in many ways, James Patterson does. And that is exactly what I realized when I read your book, Alison, Death in Disguise, that you believe in these short sentences and smaller paragraphs. And in 40 pages, I'm already, gasping for breath because so much has happened, There is a backstory of the central character. There is a murder. There is about, in this case, about theater, which I understand you have some knowledge, but probably you must have researched. So everything is done at a pace. So, and that is actually contrasting with, we were discussing about Val McDermott. Is that you pronounce it? Val McDermott? And some of the British authors that I read, and they're hugely popular, but they're very, very slow. And you're writing in a way which is more probably akin to the way I write, and the way our audience perhaps will be more accepting it. Why so?
Well, mostly, firstly, because I absolutely agree with you. I think, if you're saying this is a crime novel, I'm going to tell you a really exciting page-turning story, you kind of have to do that from page one. And I agree with you. I think in the modern world, I don't think it's just your country either. I would say it's global. We're always looking at the next thing. We're very aware of somebody wasting our time. And I think if you're not on page one thinking, I want to read this story, then you're going to put it down and not pick it up. So I just think it's a respect between me and the reader, that I want you to know that I am telling you a story and I'm telling it from page one. So thank you for what you said, because I'm glad that that's the impression you get from it, actually. I think it's a shame in some ways. I think it would be nice to live in a world where I could write a massively lengthy, poetic opening to my novel that set the scene for 3 pages, a description of London in the mist and the fog and November light. But it's not the world any of us live in. And then I think I'd probably bore myself, actually.
And as you said, we have to cut out, as James Patterson says, as Stephen King says, I'm sure many of you must have watched videos like me, that adverbs have to be removed, the adjectives have to be removed. Flowery language does not work for popular fiction, not just for crime fiction alone, but also romance and anything else which comes under the category broadly of popular fiction. Any Indian writers have you read?
Salman Rushdie, we were talking about him, but he's not Indian. He's in English, British. I don't know.
How many of you agree that Salman Rushdie is not Indian? Okay.
Yes, it's...
No, I was talking about the
yes.
crime fiction writers from India. You mentioned Ashwin earlier, so...
Yes, I have read Ashwin, yes, that's true. Yes. Okay. There was something I was going to say. I think it may be a fad, taking out adjectives. I do think there's going to be a backlash, actually, that, this sort of very, very pared down writing. I've been reading, I'm in a group of women writers called Killer Women. It's a sort of collective of women crime writers, and we all read each other's books and we're all very supportive. But I'm aware, between all of us, our books are getting very, very pared down, very kind of just lines of dialogue, and I think actually there may be a backlash. I think adjectives may become popular again. I'm not sure about adverbs.
Someone said that when you as a writer, if you don't know what's going to happen in your next chapter, then probably send a guy out with 2 guns and make him fire everywhere. So do you have that kind of block sometimes when you are let me come to other question, which probably from that question we can lead to this one. Do you really plot your novels, or do you just create a scene and then probably let the story take it forward?
It's a very good question, because I would say each one's been different, and I think I plot more now than I did at the beginning. I think I didn't know how to plot properly at the beginning, and I think I wasted a lot of time fiddling around writing a synopsis, which then ended up in the dustbin. And then I stopped doing that. Then I thought, right, I'll just write. Now I'm aware of plotting more, but I think that's because I'm better at knowing what the story needs. And actually, with my second Sister Agnes novel, where I really was still learning, I got to halfway through the story, and it was so clear who'd done it. I mean, they're classic whodunit stories, the Sister Agnes's, so there's a body or two, there's a few suspects. Agnes gets there before everybody else about who's done it. And I got to sort of halfway through the writing, and it was quite clear I'd run out of suspects. It was so clear who'd done it, and I thought, well, this is really boring, you know. So it is a bit like what you said about the guy with the two guns. At the end of that writing day, I thought, right, well, he'll have to be dead. Someone will have killed him. So I just sort of bumped him off and left him lying in a heap at the bottom of a tower block. Switched off my computer, you know, that was the end of my working day. The next day, I went to work and I switched it on, and I just thought, now what? You know, but in a way, that would be the reader's response. Oh, I thought it was him. I thought he was the one who'd done it, and now he's dead, so who is it? So it completely kick-started the rest of the writing. But I don't do that sort of thing as much now, but I think that must just be maybe I'm better at least, I wouldn't say I'm better at the writing, I'm better at the plotting. So I do tend to do more detailed synopses.
I think I do the same thing, but the other day I was listening to Lee Child for a video chat, and he said there's no fun if you have a plot in place, because he says I just start my Jack Reacher novels, just start writing and they take it forward. But what my experience has been, because I've done it that way, I think it's particularly for the mystery books, you need to have a plot in place, because then only you know the way that you're going to take. Because if you want, you can make departures there and come back to that ending, or you do not come back to that ending, that is fine. But you need to have a plan in place, and that works really well. So between between Poirot and Sherlock, who's your favorite?
This is the long answer. I would say I prefer Sherlock, but that's because it's so clear that his author was having fun, particularly with the short stories. I think Conan Doyle got tired of him with the novels. But there's a sort of joie de vivre about the Sherlock books. And the first Poirot one, where he's looking over the fence, that's fun. But there are some Poirot novels where you can sense she's thinking, oh, not him again. So that's my answer. I mean, I love both, but I would say the best of the Sherlock Holmes, where Conan Doyle is having such fun with him, are really good.
And talking about the vulnerabilities of the central character, I don't know. I've read these books, but I feel that somehow Sherlock was less vulnerable and perhaps more intelligent and maybe smarter, and Poirot was more observant and probably luckier. Is that true? Is that your assessment as well?
That's interesting. You see, the brilliant thing that Conan Doyle did was have Dr. Watson. So really, you can't have one without the other. So what you have, it's such an intelligent idea, because Sherlock Holmes is not quite human. You know, he's sort of very, very clever in a very particular way. And if you just had him as the detective, you'd think, oh, for goodness sake. But you've got Dr. Watson being a bit stupid and a bit sort of, oh, I don't know what you mean, but Holmes, surely. And you've always got that point in the good Holmes stories where Sherlock Holmes is sort of on his own in a dark room watching something, and Watson is wondering what he's up to, which of course we, the reader, are wondering what he's up to. So Watson allows somebody to move between us, the reader, and Conan Doyle, the author, with this lovely kind of humanity about him, and then can always ask the question that we would want to ask Holmes, but what do you mean? And it allows Holmes to be really very strange. Like, you know, he has Dr. Watson to read the newspapers for him, so he doesn't have to. It entirely works because there's the two of them. It's an admirable invention.
So there's a boss and there's a subordinate relationship in that sense. I feel that, okay, this question I was going to ask you about, have you read Cormoran Strike's books, right? So his being, having the disability in the leg, and that actually comes in the way of the plot because he's trying to chase people, and speed is fundamental to a detective's work. But somehow when I read that, probably that vulnerability made the character that much engaging. So I'm actually coming to conflict. And since I teach crime writing, not crime writing, I teach writing, creative writing at a Delhi University as well. And we always keep talking about conflicts, and we keep talking about external conflict and an internal conflict, etc., etc. So how important is this kind of physically limiting conflict in the central character's life? How important is this, according to you?
I think in modern contemporary detective writing it's very important. I think it's become important, and I think that's because the reader asks more. I think what Agatha Christie does with, say, Miss Marple, who's a lovely character, beautifully written, but there's Agatha Christie and Miss Marple here knowing everything, and then there's us, the reader, over here. There's a gap. And in modern crime writing, the vulnerability, which I think is you've picked up very well, allows the detective and the reader to be much more engaged in the process together. So, and although I don't think my characters are particularly physically vulnerable, there's always, I mean, Sister Agnes is always in conflict about her vows. She's never sure that she should still be a nun. And that goes all the way through the books. And the Agatha Christie 3 that I've done so far circle the divorce. I mean, I don't touch on it directly, but the fact that she feels she's failed in some way propels her into these situations where she's now solving crime. And I think we modern readers ask that. We ask for fully rounded, three-dimensional characters with their own stories, apart from just the plot unrolling itself of the murder story. So yeah, I think vulnerability is important. Certainly doubt or conflict or a sense of change in their lives.
Yeah, because when I was trying, my character is called, by the way, for those of you who do not know, my central character is a spy whose name is Andy Curran. So Andy Curran does not have a surname. As you know, Andy is actually short for Anil because worked for the army, my character, for 5 years. He's about 29 years old. And his name from Anil Karan Singh becomes Andy Karan Singh, and he knocks off the surname and he keeps it only Andy Karan. Because, when I was going to the college and interacting with some people, and even in my armed forces career, I found, and this is a very profound thing for me, and I hope it relates with you, is that in India, your birth in many ways defines where you're going to reach, right? So the caste that you're born in, the economic background that you're born in, the religion that you're born in, and the place that you're born in is going to decide where you're going to reach. And that is how India was till 20 years back. But today's youth has changed that on its head. Today we read newspaper stories about rickshawala's children becoming IS officers. So you find a Dalit's child becoming a scientist. So we are getting out of that mental framework. Every Indian young person I speak to feels that my birth is not going to decide my future. And that is how I created my central character, because he was born to a single mother, and his mother, before dying, said that I'm going to name you Karan because this is on Mahabharata. Karan was a good guy, but he ended up dying, fighting for the bad people. So you do whatever you want in your life, but you are going to remain cursed and you are going to end up a loser. And that is constantly what he's fighting in his mind. Come what may, my birth is not going to decide the future that I make. Now, this is the vulnerability of my character that I kind of put into my Andy Curran series. And trust me, Alison, whoever reads my book, 9 out of 10 people do not talk about the dirty bomb or the pirates I'm talking about, or the murders, they come back to me and say that I can relate with this character, and that is where I feel that it is very, very engaging. Like last night when I was reading your book, Death in Disguise, so more than the murder, the moment Agatha Christie, and the way she says that my husband, look, I never thought this would happen. He's left me for another woman, so that is the conflict in her head, and the murder happened. So immediately I connect more with that conflict and less with that investigation. So I think this is also talking about Strike again, once again. I think J.K. Rowling writing character of Strike without the disability would not have been able to make the impact in the sales and connection of the people, and probably not a series. I mean, just a long answer to that, but I think vulnerabilities are important. So would you like to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly it. But I do think it's to do with the modern readership as well. I think, and I think also it's fun if you have a detective, because you can come back to that character. Sister Agnes has her best friend Athena and also a priest friend called Father Julius, and those three are all in all the books. And it's like writing a soap opera or something. It's like, it's lovely to kind of come back to the same characters, and I think that's, for us readers, that's fun as well.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come to the crime scene investigation. And crime scene investigation, as all of you will know. Have you seen the series called CSI on the TV? Very popular. Of course, they do more drama, and they show that multiple colors and the laboratories and the green and the blue liquids bubbling, etc., etc. And it doesn't work that way. CID maybe hum log wahi karte hain. So that's okay. But you come from a developed nation, right? India is a developing country, and my experience of United Kingdom, I was on a holiday there 2 years ago with my family, and we went to several cities, and except one odd relative in a small town, I don't know anyone, and we were very comfortable, and things were absolutely all right. And of course the terrorist strikes and the follow-up of the police, and that we keep seeing. So there's obviously a lot of involvement and a lot of technical expertise and understanding of the crime scene investigation that happens, which is slightly at a different level in our country. When I speak to the policemen, there is not really that much crime scene investigation. Even in a judiciary, technology is not used that much to solve cases. We are still, dependent on witnesses making statement and the witnesses going rogue, etc., etc. So once again, back to technology. Now, you said you have, for writing your novels, you've been in touch with the police officers. So how difficult it has made your job as a writer with the rapid changes that are happening in the way crime scenes are handled?
I think it's not just, it's also true that London's changing. So the London that Sister Agnes occupies keeps changing. And I think, and it goes back to what you were saying about how we can't hang up the phone anymore. That in the first Sister Agnes novel, there's something about a computer, and it's a great big thing with a screen that she sort of switches on, and that's really not that long ago. So I think this whole business of technology and the change of it is tricky for writers, because if you read a Charles Dickens novel, it's history, it's the past, or Sherlock Holmes, but it wasn't when those people were writing it. And I think there's a sort of tale behind every novel of 10 or 15 years where it just starts to look dated, and then I guess it can be history, so then it's fine. It becomes a sort of, archive. So for that, I think that may be one of the reasons I try not to get too bogged down in the technology that the police are using, because it will date. And actually, this nice policeman who I talked to a lot about my work, he held up a mobile phone and he said, "This is the source of more solutions to crime than anything else we've ever had in the history of policing. The mobile phone is fantastically useful to the police. The traces it leaves, even, despite the best efforts of, criminals doing stuff with it, the police can do masses with a mobile phone. And one has to incorporate that up to a point. And in fact, one of my detective writer friends recently said, isn't it funny how if you look at the detective and the chase of the criminal, mobile phones going out of signal, running out of charge, breaking.
Never happens.
Well, it happens all the
It happens,
time.
okay.
That's the point, because at some point there's just your detective and there's the baddie in that archetypal classic thing on their own, up a mountain or somewhere. And if someone could just ring the police, or it would just ruin it. You kind of have to have that archetypal moment where it's just the two of them against each other, and you have to get the mobile phone out of the way. So the failure rate of mobile phones in crime fiction is much, much higher than it is in real life.
No, I think I had similar situation. A real life situation yesterday in my hotel room, and I was struggling with my phone and for almost 1 hour, and there was actually no signal. So, okay, so I think we've come more or less to the discussion that we had planned for today, and now we will request you, if you have any questions on the nailing the mystery genre, you can ask us now. We have a mic here. Can you just move around to the mic? Anyone questions? Yes, please.
Hi, it's really funny what you said about getting rid of the mobile phone, because I'm a children's writer, and the first thing we do in children's novels is we try to get rid of the parents. So the parents die, they get run over by rhinoceros, So there are all of these restrictions that that happen in fiction, and I think in the mystery, in your genre, in crime, I see it. I don't read crime novels, but I do watch them. And I've noticed that they've used procedural. So procedural, the procedure of signing in the criminal, taking his fingerprints, interviewing it's a bit of exposition, and it has the potential to bore the reader to death. But I've noticed that they're becoming really clever and making the procedural the heart of making the story really exciting. And I wonder if you do that, if you try to take the thing which is the challenge, the technology, or the easy solution. Well, you killed off the most obvious suspect. What do you do with the challenges? Maybe mention a few of them, and how do you get around them in your plotting?
Well, obviously they're fun. I mean, yes, the forensic stuff, of course, is very interesting. So, I mean, in the Sister Agnes, the most recent called A Violent Act, there's a hostel, there's homeless young people, they're very troubled, and right at the beginning, one of them's taken an overdose and died. And it's not at all surprising, and it probably wasn't intentional. She was an addict, she was using all sorts of stuff. So all that pharmacology comes to play, and Sister Agnes is the one person to say, I think she was killed. And it doesn't look reasonable. There's no reason why this kid, unfortunately, there's no reason why she should have been killed. She had plenty of reason to overdose in a mistaken way. And Sister Agnes has her own trouble, her own conflict to do with her father, who she had a very unresolved relationship with, and that's all come to light. And everyone's saying to her, look, you're just depressed, you're putting your own anxieties onto this case. We all think that Abby just died. And the police take one look at it and say, we know what this is. Partly because of the sort of kid Abby is, and that's true in all countries. I think that there are some people where the police will go, what can we do? And they all walk away. So the forensic stuff in that it's not that it's not fun to find out about the pharmacology, find out what would be in her bloodstream, because obviously there's a certain amount in investigation. But it's making sure it's not stuck. It's not the thing that's taking up several pages where we all learn about what drugs might be in this poor girl's bloodstream. It's just in passing, and it's relevant to the story.
See, let me just respond to this from my perspective. When I wrote this book called The Girl Who Loved a Pirate, so this was the story of a girl who falls in love with a pirate, and I wanted to make it very palatable and very easy for the audience to understand how a pirate operates. So for those of you who do not know, I've commanded 3 ships, and I've fought pirates, and I know how the pirates live. But if I try to tell you in the language that we use in my organization where I used to work, probably you will not be able to understand anything. So you have to make it extremely simple, because it is the story that you're communicating. These are just additional things, and they should not come in the way. Like when you look out, the window pane should not come in the way. You should be able to get the scenery right. So what I did was I used a simple illustration in the beginning, diagram of a ship. Now ship has got many parts, but for the purpose of my story, which parts are important? 5 parts. So I just marked those 5 parts, and try to work harder and think about these technical aspects, the technical details and how I can really go around or make them simple. And whoever reads the reviews are there, people say that we found it very easy to understand. So I think when it comes to CSI, we have to really make it very, very easy and palatable for the readers. Yes, ma'am.
In the story of Agatha Christie as the protagonist, you've written about someone who actually did exist at one point in time. But your sister Agnes, is that also based on something that is someone that existed or exists, or is it more like a Chesterton, that a clone kind of thing? In other words, my question really is, are your characters always based on someone who lived or lives, or based on a previous fiction character that you might want to take into the modern century?
Thank you. What really struck me when I started writing the Agatha Christie's was that there's a difference between someone being real and someone being true. And it was important to me to be true to Agatha Christie, but it's also important to me to be true to Sister Agnes, even though she lives entirely in my head. So she really isn't based on anyone real. I mean, I do know nuns. I've sort of, in my life, have encountered nuns. So the issues about whether she should stay in the order, those sorts of things, I will have taken from real life. Things around the characters, I will take from real life. But it is the strangest thing, being a writer of fiction, that the people in my head are as real as the people out there. And in a way, that's what made Agatha Christie such a challenge. And obviously, in the Agatha Christie novels, things are happening that never happened to her in real life. Like, she doesn't solve a murder that happened in a theatre. On the other hand, she did go to the theatre. She loved the theatre. So I've sort of researched lots and lots and lots about her. And the other thing I do with the Agatha Christie novels is go to the British Library. I've chosen a week in which this murder happens. I'll go and get all the copies of the Times for the 3 months before and including that week. So I don't read lots and lots about Agatha Christie because I don't want to have to sort of bog myself down in making sure that I have done the right thing to do with her life. But it's fantastically interesting to fill my mind with all the concerns of what it was like in Britain in 1928, say. Even sort of little funny tiny things, or fashions, or cars, or silly jokes that people made in the House of Commons that day. It's really, really interesting. So it is about being true to the character, whether they're real or fictional. Yes, and I think that's part of being a crime writer, is knowing that, sensing that.
Which kind of backdrops inspire you the most? Are they crowded places or lonely places or bungalows or something where no one visits, or something which is completely filled with people and the criminal is hiding somewhere?
Really good question. I'm such a Londoner. I love crowds. I went for a walk. The walk I went for this morning, it was so. I love crowds. I'm such a city person. I mean, my husband jokes if we go on holiday to the British countryside that I get phobic. I'm phobic about sort of wild animals. It's ridiculous for an English woman, but I'm much happier in London. On the other hand, I do think this archetypal lone detective, you have to be true to that in storytelling. I think that's never gone away. And I think there is always a point in my stories where for some reason there's just the villain and the detective. And you, the reader, the detective is going somewhere to meet somebody, and with any luck we haven't quite guessed yet who it's going to be. And there's something solitary in that. There is something solitary in it.
So with this, we conclude the session, but not before I make this very important announcement. So this is Alison Joseph's book, Death in Disguise. This book is not available in the bookstore down below, but it is available on Amazon. Most of you use Kindle. You can buy it on Kindle. It is 3.5 $6. You can also buy a hard copy from Amazon for about $8. And here is my book. This is called The Girl Who Loved a Spy. There's another one called The Girl Who Loved a Pirate. Both these books are available in CrossFit Bookstore for 199 rupees. So if you're interested, you can go and look up there. I'll be very happy to sign. And do read Alison's books as well. And give her a feedback. Amazon has got that option of giving you a review, right? Thank you very much.